the sponsorship of the Digama Group. Welcome to Rumbo Minero. My name is Jorge Leon Benavides, and together with Cesar Campos, we are going to do the following program. Cesar, how are you?
What a pleasure to greet you, Jorge, as always.
Well, to begin with, we have as our guest Gonzalo Quijandría, who is the president of the symposium organized by the National Mining Society. It is a very important conference, I would say worldwide, where specialists are coming. And we are going to talk a little bit about the plans they have for this great event and who are going to be the speakers and what they are going to talk about.
Besides, it is a symposium that has changed its name, right? Because before it was just a gold
Now it
symposium.
is all the generals.
It became the Copper Symposium. And now it's all minerals. In a season, Jorge, in which the price of these metals is rising tremendously, it seems that God is shining on us. If we were to unblock a series of projects, especially copper, which has risen in value by about 1%, gold, zinc, we would be in a very good situation. And I believe that this symposium is a good occasion to discuss and support the projects that we are working on.
And speaking of mining, you had an observation with respect to this working group that is being carried out.
And speaking of mining, you had an observation with respect to this working group that is being carried out, in which it states that the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Energy and Mines, the Ministry of Agrarian Development and Irrigation, as well as the Ministry of Economy and Finance have already agreed to reduce the deadline for the admission of environmental impact studies for mining projects, which would take 5 days, i.e. 5 days. That would take 5 days, i.e. they would reduce it from 60 to 5 days. From 60 to 5 days.
We will be watching.
And we will be watching because this is really just a proposal and it seems that they have agreed. So just the fact that they have agreed, I think it's a great...
But the important thing is that the politicians are not saying things for the auditorium. But we will really see if it is the 5 days, and we are going to be looking closely because Peru needs it for investments. We will also talk about Petroperu. We Peruvians are starting to get tired of it. The specialists also. And it seems that it has had a very serious problem that could affect it. And we could talk about a word that we Peruvians are already fed up with, the bailout, a new bailout probably of Petroperu. Thousands, no, hundreds of millions of dollars again to a barrel that for me is bottomless. But let's talk to César Gutiérrez, former president of Petroperu, a specialist in the subject, to see what those possible exits are and what has happened that could affect this issue. Next, we go to the main mining news, thanks to Gabriela Chicoma.
Thanks, Jorge. These are the main mining news of the week.
At the close of the first quarter of the year, Canadian miner Sierra Metals reported that its polymetallic and Oricocha mine in Lima had a throughput of some US dollars of 240,686 tons processed, an increase of 10% compared to a similar period in 2023. This is the result of increased access to mining areas. However, compared to the last 3 months of last year, it represented a decrease of 9% due to the natural depletion of the ore zones. In the upper part of the mining unit, metallic and non-metallic mining exports continue to rise, reaching $3,193 million in January, which meant an increase of 13.3% with respect to the same month of 2023, informed the Ministry of Energy and Mines. Copper, gold, zinc and iron stand out among the largest foreign sales, which constitute 89.3% of the total value of mining exports and 53% of national exports.
Thanks to Gabriela Chicoma for the main mining news of the week. Well, we caught up with Gonzalo Quijandría, president of the organizing committee of the symposium, which is the international mining meeting. The symposium that used to be the Gold Symposium is now just a symposium. It is a very important event, very internationally recognized, especially for the conferences that are held, and it is in Peru, and it is a Peruvian event held by the National Society of Mining, Petroleum and Energy. We met with Gonzalo, who is the president, so that he could talk to us a little bit and tell us a little bit, because he is already, and tell us a little bit about it, because this important event is coming up in a month or so. Welcome, Gonzalo, to Rumbo Minero. Tell us a little bit about the symposium.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, Cesar Jorge. This is the 15th edition, but it is held every 2 years, as is the tradition in mining events. And what we are seeing is that 30 years have passed since the first edition. So when we do a little bit, or we reflect a little bit about what the mining sector has been 30 years ago, year 94, what we had was, in a way, the mines that to this day work quite well in the Batolito de Patas, southern, and a Lanacocha that was a mine that did not have the size it had later on. It was an incipient mine that was just starting. That was the mining sector in 1994. Looking back today, one begins to think how much we have changed for the better. Right? In other words, how we have been able to attract the most important mining investment in the world here to our country. And that is the journey we want to make in these 30 years, and that is why we want to celebrate it. In other words, 30 years ago, in that first edition, the general manager of Newmont, the general manager of Goldfields, and the general manager of Barrick sat down with the Peruvian gold sector and talked about the prospects for the Peruvian gold sector in the world. Those three companies immediately invested in Peru, as we all know, but so did Anglo American, so did BHP Billiton, Glencore. The largest mining companies in the world began to come here one by one. And this is the sector we have today, a competitive sector that, let us say, I do not have to talk here about the production levels we have in copper, gold, silver. It is very interesting.
It is very interesting, and the positive consequences that this has led Peru economically in these 30 years that you are talking about has really reached what it has reached. It is really interesting, the point, the focus that you are going to touch on, because bringing internationals, and you will tell us about them later. Interesting point, because yes, it really changed Peru.
It changed Peru. It changed Peru, totally. Yes, Peru was transformed, definitely, in addition to great achievements in the fight against poverty and other things. But the most interesting thing about all this is that the perspective is not to look with nostalgia, but to look, hey, where are we? Where are we? We're not even halfway there. We can take this to much, much, much more. In other words, we are not only talking about the portfolio of projects ready to invest, but potentialities to explore, yes.
Gonzalo, Jorge alluded to the quality of the speakers we are going to have, and undoubtedly by Romer, who has been awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in the 18,000. 18. If he is one of the stars, tell us a little about him.
Who from Sarasota? The main speaker, indeed, the Nobel Prize winner of the year of the pandemic, Paul Romer. And we are bringing him because Paul Romer has a series of very interesting ideas regarding how to measure progress in countries and how wealth is developed and generated. And wealth is generated through innovation, through productivity per worker and research and development. That is what we miners do. The Peruvian miner capable of reprocessing tailings, of separating ore with high-grade and low-grade content with X-rays, the Peruvian miner who is doing traceability projects through blockchain, that is what generates wealth. And that is precisely what Paul Romer is proposing, and that is the type of discourse we want to give on the basis of what is coming, on the basis of what is coming later or what is already here in reality, which is the energy transition. The energy transition towards a decarbonized energy, that is what we are going to talk about in depth. And there is a table where Professor Lambert from Oxford University is coming, an expert in hydrogen who is going to talk about the potential that a country like Peru has to develop the possibility of generating energy through hydrogen. But we are also going to talk about wind, solar, etc., and all the minerals that are needed to generate energy through hydrogen. And all the minerals that are needed to reach that transition, which will have an impact and already has a direct impact on all the critical minerals, starting with copper. There is also going to be an important copper roundtable. The president is coming. The board of directors of Codelco, the largest copper company in the world, and the president is also coming. The president and the board of directors of Newmont, the world's largest gold company, are also coming because once again, Peru has the capacity to attract this level of investors in an expectant moment like the one the world is going through at the moment.
Now, Gonzalo, I had two questions. One is, what is going to be done and what is the goal of the symposium? And the other one is, talking to you a few minutes ago, the importance for Peru to be a center of events recognized worldwide. Because it is not only the big projects, as you have already said, when the big ones started to come in. It is not only the big projects, as you have already said, when the big ones. But in terms of events, it is also a place, Peru, a country that has the Perumin, has the symposium, and has Spomina, among other events, but I am mentioning more or less what is in the World Program. The World Program. And that is also a positive issue for communication to the outside world, to our mining investors.
I will answer you the first thing. The goal, obviously, to attract investment, important investment, serious investment, formal investment, such as we have been able to attract in the last 30 years. There is a portfolio of more than $50 billion ready to start developing it, and also to attract investors who want to explore more, because the exploration potential is there. So yes, that objective is to maintain the attraction that Peru has for investors. But secondly, and just as you said, as an event center, Peru, and we have been working on this a lot in the last few months, we have also modernized the logo a little bit, because it started, and the name of the event itself, because before it was the Gold Symposium, because the potential was gold, then it was followed by copper. Today, the last name should have 10 more names, tin, lithium. So we decided to remove the last name and say that this is an international mining symposium. It is known as the Symposium. The Symposium, we have also changed, we have modernized the logo, and we have changed the venue. We are going to Miraflores, to the Mario Hotel, precisely because of that, attending a little bit to what the participants themselves told us. They told us, hey, it is a pleasure to come to Peru in a climate. It is good. The food is good. You are in Miraflores. You do business. It is a center where investors feel very comfortable to go beyond talking about mining. And precisely because of that, we said, let's go to Miraflores. Let's get into the fact that we are also attracting important investors. Here, let's say investors who are going to return.
But also in a kind of minibus that we are experiencing with the price of minerals. Ismael Benavides a few days ago made a very interesting account about the fact that they are going to address the issue of copper. It is at $4 a pound. In other words, it has gone up to January 2024, 18%, gold 30%, silver 21%, zinc 8%. Then there is coffee and cocoa, since they are agro-export products. In other words, we are really living at the time when this international meeting is going to be held. This international meeting is going to take place, Gonzalo, a very favorable circumstance with these products.
Yes, today it has already been rising. It is around the copper pound. That is something that we had not projected at the end of last year, not even in our best dreams. That is what is happening today. And that is, I believe that we have aimed well at the moment when the symposium is going to be held in a month. It is going to be key. The number of investors that are going to come and watch. This is a very important moment for copper, but also for tin, historical levels as well. And this is a very important moment for copper. This is a very important moment for copper, but also for tin, with historical price levels. Yes, it is an important moment because the world needs the minerals that Peru produces. We already know that Peru has to give itself to propose options.
The logical thing is that the environmentalists crossed with anti-miners now need the minerals to be able to manage the environmental, to be able to handle the environmental issue and electromobility well. Gonzalo, I am looking at w.symposio. P for registration, which is a very important issue. That everyone registers for this important event, which is going to be the date. Do you remind me? May, in Lima, Miraflores, w.symposio P. You can register. It is a very important and unmissable conference. Finally, Gonzalo, I would like you to tell us a little about how you are going to approach the issue of illegal mining, which we are also seeing entering Brazil, Colombia. They are also sharing this scourge. On the other hand, there is no real solution. I think there are many culprits here. It is not only illegal mining per se, but also the government. Illegal mining per se, but also the government in many years has not been able to combat it, but on the other hand, to show a viable issue.
Illegal economies in general are the main risk that our country has at the moment, but not only our country, the region, we see it every day in Ecuador, we are seeing it in other countries, and in particular at this moment, it is the illegal mining. Why? Because of the high prices, the people effectively, this is also attracting as well as good investors. It also attracts mafias, unfortunately, and the mafias are in action in places like Patas, in places like La Rinconada, in Puno, in places like Madre de Dios. And here we are not talking about poor producers. The poor producer is the one we see in the pictures trying to get some ore. Here there are mafias involved in the collection, processing, and commercialization. And this is something that cannot be fought by one country alone. This has to be a way of dealing. We have to find all the threads. This is like drug trafficking. It is just like that. Nowadays, it is a more profitable business even than drug trafficking, unfortunately. We have to have a regional vision, and that is why we are inviting you. We have invited you to join us. Prepared a study whose conclusions will be presented at the symposium regarding what is happening with illegal mining in the country, but we want to hear what is happening in Colombia, we want to hear what is happening in Brazil, we want to hear what is happening in other countries in the region. We want to hear what is happening in Brazil, we want to hear what is happening in other countries in the region, so that we can have some kind of not only comparative legislation on how to deal with this issue, but regional and global solutions. Because as we were saying, we are talking about large amounts of money coming in to finance these illicit activities. And this is not just the theft of money. And this is not only the theft of resources. Here we are talking about the promotion of other illicit activities. And at the end of the day, it is not only a competition to formal mining, it is a competition to the whole country. In other words, what kind of country do we want? A country where the good Peruvians are the ones who really progress, or a country that is going to be taken over by the mafias? That is the great discussion we are going to have.
Definitely, to draw conclusions or to see some of the proposals that other countries have is an issue that is a topic that could, because we have not found the formula, and it is a topic that would be very interesting, and we are going to see it in the symposium. I repeat, the one in May, here is the website. www.symposio.pe. You can immediately register for the talks, which are really going to be very good and of international level. Gonzalo, thank you very much for coming to share a little bit, and we hope to have you back in a few days to continue reinforcing. The post will be very important to see those conclusions. That will be very interesting.
I will be here with pleasure, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, now I give way to Gabriela Chicoma, who has an important announcement. Go ahead, Gabriela.
Thank you very much. Expo Mina Peru, the largest and most important mining event of the year with 16 years of trajectory, with the special participation of the United States as guest mining country. Expo Mina Peru is the only Peruvian event certified by the United States Department of Commerce. Do not be left out and be part of this great mining event. Reserve your booth at Expo Mina Peru. For more information, visit our website www.expominaperu.com.
Well, in our America Mining block, we are already linked to New York, USA, to New York, to Wall Street, with José Gonzales, who is also the international editor of Rumbo Minero magazine. Rumbo Minero magazine. José, how are you?
Very well, Jorge, thank you. I am always pleased to be on the program.
José, tell us a little bit. At the spring meeting in Washington, D.C. last week, the IMF has predicted that the global economy will remain stable with a 3.2% increase. By 24-25, being driven primarily by the US, Europe recovering from low growth, and China experiencing the impact of its real estate sector. What effects will these growth rates have for emerging markets in general and mining in particular? In mining in particular, I assume that this is being projected is as long as we don't have a war problem.
That is correct. That is so, Jorge. According to the International Monetary Fund, despite negative predictions, the global economy remains remarkably resilient, with sustained growth and declining inflation. For the multilateral, global growth reached its lowest point in 2022 at 2.3%, recovering to 3.2% this year and next year, with inflation at 2.8% this year and 2.4% next year, confirming what in English is called a soft landing, that is, an economic slowdown without recession. The United States has recovered its pre-pandemic growth rate, Europe is recovering from very low growth rates, and China faces bottlenecks in an economy facing critical mass problems and increasing maturity with the emerging markets. And increasing maturity with the emerging markets in the global south still experiencing some post-pandemic effects. As far as growth in emerging markets is concerned, the fund projects 4.2% growth in 2024 from 2025, with Asia growing at 5.2 and 4.9, India outgrowing China, India becoming the economic engine of Asia, emerging Europe at 3.1 and 2.8, Middle East and Central Asia at 2.8 and 4.2, Sub-Saharan Africa at 3.8 and 4.2, and Latin America with the slowest growth at 2% and 2.5%. And 2.5%. As they say, these scenarios do not envisage a conflagration that escalates beyond than what it is at the moment, which is focused and not widespread. The inflationary effect could be felt through oil, which although it reached $95 a barrel, it is already below $90 a barrel again. As far as mining is concerned, the IMF maintains that the green transition requires greater investment to the extent that cutting carbon emissions is compatible with economic growth. The fund calls for accelerating investment further to the extent that is progressing at a healthy pace in developed economies in China, with the process needing to be extended to emerging economies that must increase their investment in green energy, fossil emission reductions with technology transfers from China, and developed economies and public investment in the energy sector. And developed economies hand in hand with public and private investment.
Prices. So we continue to make progress in the organization of the 9th version of SPOMINA, the 6th version of the mining conference that will be also incorporated in SPOMINA with FEMIN. And this time under the advocation, of course, of the great event that we are going to have as host Peru. Of the 21 leading economies of the Asia Pacific, the appointment to PICI, which really gives us a very important prop. Tell us how we continue to advance in this, what the dynamics will be, how we will be able to, and what could you tell us in detail about the organization?
I am going to, Cesar, I would like to mention a little bit. We are going to go forum by forum to also mention the PEC meeting. And on this occasion, I would like to talk to you about the legal forum, which is particularly important due to the circumstances in which mining finds itself, not only in Peru, but at a regional and global level. To the extent that decarbonization via electromobility and the energy transition modifies the global energy matrix from one based on fossil fuels to renewable energy, the role of critical minerals and mining within the extractive industries will have to become increasingly relevant, demanding a renewal and updating of the laws and regulations that govern it. This legal framework must also assume new criteria linked to what are called ESG principles: environmental protection, harmony with social interests, and transparency in the corporate governance of mining companies. In fact, as we have been covering a mining course, new legal frameworks have already been established with different tendencies in Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Panama, and Colombia, without all of them being constructive with mining. Part of the problem is the approach to informal and illegal mining, among other aspects, which, to the extent that prices continue to rise, will in some way continue to be a breeding ground to the extent that revenues will be higher, particularly in precious metals. For example, it is clear to the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Brazil that when it comes to artisanal mining, incentives are more valuable than punishments. Incentives that new laws in the United States and the European Union are promoting. On the other hand, for formal and modern mining in terms of critical minerals, regions that had not been very friendly to mining are now changing their tenor. The legal forum seeks to bring together experts in mining law to analyze and discuss the legal framework for mining in Peru, including issues related to canon, royalties, and voluntary contributions from the regions, as well as regulation of exploration, exploitation, and mine closure activities and relations with the public administration and local communities, in addition to the REINFO and its effects on informal and legal mining. All of this within the framework of global and regional mining legislation as a comparative. By way of comparative legislation, we are honored to have Jorge Muñiz, founding partner and principal of Estudio Muñiz, the largest law firm in Peru with particular expertise in energy and mining issues, chairing the legal forum.
Thank you very much, Jose, for the information. This information, of course, we will also have it in the next edition of Rumbo Minero. Speaking of the next edition of Rumbo Minero, You can purchase this directory, the most important directory of the Peruvian mining sector and one of the most important in the Americas. You can see it. This can be acquired free of charge only by entering rumbominero.com, and you can download it immediately to have it on your computer or as you wish. On your computer or however you want to manage it. All the information of the most important suppliers of the mining sector and mining projects. Okay, Cesar, we have some information.
Yes, as it is not the time to present Jorge the block.
AMSAC Mining Assets. Activos Mineros. AMSAC is a Peruvian public company with a great purpose to give life back to the planet. Thus, we are dedicated to contribute to the sustainable development of the country through mining environmental remediation. At AMSAC, we recover areas affected by high and very high-risk mining liabilities, which are abandoned or where the state has not identified those responsible. In this line of work, today we are present in 11 regions of Peru, with a portfolio of 65 remediation projects, which are located in different phases. Promotion of private investment. In AMSAC, we represent the Peruvian state as counterpart of the transfer contracts of important mining projects. We also supervise the fulfillment of the commitments and obligations that are part of such processes. Today we are leaders in corporate management systems. Among the 35 companies of the FONAFE Corporation, we have ISO 9001 certifications in quality management, ISO 14001 in environmental management, ISO 37001 in anti-bribery management, and ISO 45001 in occupational health and safety management. At AMSAC, sustainability and care for the planet are our DNA, and that is why we are proud to contribute to creating a better world through the recovery of air, water, soil, and ecosystems impacted by mining liabilities. And thus, contribute to 10 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030. Giving life back to the planet is more than a simple phrase for us. It is the guide of our daily actions, with which we have a positive impact on the lives of thousands of Peruvians, and through them, on our country.
Well, we now meet César Gutiérrez, former president of Petroperu, and of course we are going to talk about what all Peruvians are concerned about. Petroperu, what is going on? There is a new topic again. How are you? Welcome, César.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you very much for the invitation, César.
You as an expert. We have already talked a few times about this problem that seems to be a bottomless barrel, right? But the issue of the shutdown of the flexi-cocking unit and the lack of electricity at that time has generated something that you are going to tell us now. Why is it that a problem has arisen? And also this is going to generate that the loss will make that already. A rather complicated projection has one more punishment. If you can first explain, because I want Peruvians to flexi-cock. I want Peruvians to flexi-cock, and I want you to explain to us what each thing is and what has happened and why. This will generate that Petroperu, in addition to its projection to be able to pay Peru, is going to have problems.
Within the refinery production, that is to say, you take crude oil, you take fuels from the refinery production and from the process. One of them is flexi-coke. What does it consist of? Residual oils converted into diesel. This is very important. Why is that important? Because the sale price of residual oil in the world is 1% below the cost of the input. If the input costs 100, the price of the finished product is worth 70. That is what the market pays. Flexi-coke is what it does. That residual converts it into diesel, and the diesel sells 50% above the cost of the input. So when the flexi-coke doesn't work, you're going to have a very large amount of residual, like 30% of the total volume, and you're going to be working a lot of it. The gross income is going to be at a loss because the sale is going to be 30% below the cost of the input. That is the gravity. So for the year 2024, Petroperuvia has foreseen that despite everything, if the things that are not working are working, they were going to have a loss of about $120 million. Well, now this is going to be more complicated because the Flexicoke is going to be stopped more or less until June. And in the meantime, it makes a high production of residuals. There is going to be loss anyway. From loss of the gross margin is going to be loss. And that is going to mean that until June, you are going to work at a loss. The big problem is that in June, there is a bond interest payment due and a credit they have with European banking for $170 million, which they are not going to have. So the question is that if they were given $800 million to cover a gap of 1,200 are missing. Now, how can they pay the $170 million that they are not going to have?
That is it. You are insinuating that there is a possibility of a new indebtedness.
That is Petroperu. Even the 800 that Cesar gave him was insufficient. That is, the debt with suppliers, according to Petro's financial statements, was 2,000. They gave him 800, and he did not know how they were going to do it. And now what is missing is the problem. The Flexicoke is going to lead you to an additional loss that you are not going to have to pay $170 million of interest and principal to a financial obligation that matures in June. That is adding to the problem.
Cesar, there have been a lot of ideas on how to solve this problem. And what we have been able to observe from politicians is that, for example, Premier Oterola at first said that the subsidies were finished. But then he held a meeting, checked the numbers, and said, well, we are going to subsidize. What is it is a little bit of a secret for Peruvians in general? Because of course, any Peruvian who doesn't know the subject says, why don't they close it down? That they stop spending billions saving for a company that is bankrupt. So where do you see the way? Where do you see the way forward? To privatize? To continue giving money in a country that does not have the resources to give that amount of money? What can be done?
Look, Expremium does not bring the justice of what you mentioned. He said first, no, this is a company that has completed its cycle. And he said that in Cadiz, exactly. It was what the audience wanted to hear. He was making policy, then he backtracked, and there was a way out. The debt is $8 billion. That is what Petroperu's financial statement says. Of that, more or less 3,500. The short term and the difference in the long term. The difference to long term. So to pay that with the margins it leaves is practically impossible. What I was saying was, let's go to insolvency and let us come to an agreement with the creditors and say, well, the big question is the management to pay this. Let's make the effort to see how to mitigate this by putting the accounts in order. Then we will see if the company will be sold because the accounts are not clear. That is to say, when they were rehearsing and I was telling you what they say that this year they are going to have a $200 million loss. They were working under certain revenue assumptions. Those assumptions are not going to be met. As the figure is not so clear, what we need is clarity. And with this administration, it is not possible. Management overrides the board of directors because it is such a specialized subject. The directors do not know and simply go over the board's head. They tell you anything that the directors and the president start repeating. So I was the idea. Let's go into insolvency. Let the creditors take control. Let's sort out the accounts and see what we do. In the meantime, we don't really know this black hole that is Petroperu.
Some people talk about maybe moving forward in the generation of agreements to obtain geological information. We are already talking about futures, about Peru, the lots, and Petroperu can also carry out, let's say, a traceability, let's say seismic traceability for the purposes of generate a drilling of new wells and looking a little bit into the future. Let's say no. What viability in the midst of this scenario these alternatives that are being presented may have?
Look at what Peru Petro has done from last year to this year is simply to make the situation more difficult. The oil exploration issue, the commitments obtained in the delivery 16769 and the OT have zero exploratory commitment. Exploratory, that is the condition, that is how it was granted. Now it says that they are going to promote more lots. The big problem that the lots have since the year 2011 is that when you are going to offer a Hungaria lot, you have to have at least basic geological information that gives you an incentive to explore. But we have had from 2011 to 2011 62 exploration contracts. How many do we have today? 6. Of the 62, how many were found? 2. So the background for the outside is as if there were none. And if you come to offer me even more lots with little geological information, I am not going. then what is it about? Let's have some basic geological information. Why did it work? From 98 to 2011 to 62 contracts? Because there is geological information inherited from a Peru-Canada agreement. We need to replicate that. If we have geological information, more or less, that from some prospect of finding, they will be able to come. But in the current condition, they travel around the world like Cantinflas in 80 days, and they simply do not get anything.
I come on my part. There has been some new visualization of these scenarios. That is, the people who have now entered Petroperu, Peru also to Peru, Petro of course, but Peru also, which obviously generates the guidance, are having a person line.
In such endenos as to why. The Ministry of Energies and Mines, let's say, in its plan, it had Romulo a lot because it doesn't come from that. It is full of people, the Seronismo. Seronism is very important in the Ministry of Energy and Mines. And what has happened? The current president of Peru Petro is from the same group. That is to say, the same thing that Isabel Tafur did, he is the continuity of that. So we can only hope that Peru will receive the term of the lots. That is what we have.
Thank you very much, Cesar, for being with us. Definitely, as Roque Benavides says, we cannot say whether we are an oil country or not. Whether or not we are an oil country if we have not explored as we should. Precisely for our fair, our Expomina Congress. In September, one of the leaders in oil exploration is arriving. One of the leaders in oil exploration in the West. That is the line of what you say. In other words, let us first make an exploration plan to see where we stand.
Just what Jorge mentions, for example, in the Western case, which here works with Anadarko, there are 3 out of 6 contracts. In other words, they are in the continental divide, which is a great risk to drill there. So, if you do not have enough information, the risk is enormous. So, what we have to do is to give them information that generates some expectation.
Marcos, the 250,000 barrels that Peru needs do not even reach 40,000. Of the 40,000, it is not even used in Peru, it goes somewhere else.
20 outside and 20 outside.
Then we cannot even cover our own territory due to the country's strategy.
Thank you.
It is a shame. And well, I believe that what you have said today is very important because few people dare to talk about of dissolving or of having a creditor enter. And I go along the same lines. I believe that many opportunities have already been given and this is still a bottomless barrel. Thank you very much.
Jorge, thank you, Cesar.
All right, now we are going to Gabriela Chicoma with Expomina. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Expomina Peru, the largest and most important mining meeting in Peru in 2024 with 16 years of trajectory. Do business with the mining sector of Peru and America. Expomina Peru from September 11th to 13th, 2024 at the Yoke and Lima Exhibition Center. Portfolio of mining projects in Peru for more than $53 million and portfolio of mining projects in America for $450 million. Invest with the leaders. Participate in Expomina Peru 2024. For more information, check our website www.expominaperu.com.
Well, coming to the end of the program, Cesar, I think that Gonzalo Quijandria's symposium is very important. We have already given you the information so that you can register for it. And César Gutiérrez's point of view is very clear. At last, someone is telling it like it is with the future of the company.
Do not forget, as Consuelo Quijandera said, that you have a great guest, Paul Romer, Nobel Prize in Economics of all, no less than in this symposium.
Peru. Well, on behalf of Jorge Leon Benavides and Cesar Campos, thank you very much for being with us. And don't forget, in a few minutes, we will be with Peru Construye to talk about infrastructure and construction in our dear country, in our beloved country. Thank you very much.